One of the main things I see a lot of DMs wanting from their players is for them to simply talk to each other in character. However, this is uncommon for a reason. For a lot of new role players, it's really uncomfortable to talk to each other in character. It's difficult. It's not easy. However, it's one of the number one things that DMs often complain about when it comes to what their players are or are not doing. So, how do you do that? How, as a new role player, do you speak to your fellow players in character? Well, here's a couple tips to make it just a little bit easier. Alright, so let's just start with a disclaimer. Not everyone needs to do this immediately. Of course, everyone plays D&D differently. Some DMs truly don't care if players talk to each other in character. I just see that a lot. I don't see that always. Not every DM is on the same page about this. Some DMs are perfectly happy to just have characters talk to each other as players instead of in-character roleplay, and that's perfectly okay. On top of that, some players just aren't immediately comfortable, and that is okay as well. If you are not comfortable with role-playing, you don't need to jump into it immediately. Do what's best for your game and what's best for your table to have fun. However, if you want to engage in the game in character, here are some tips on how to do that. Tip number 1, bounce off of charismatic players or bounce off of the DM. Chances are you have at least one person at the table who is already talking in character, and if you're a nervous role player, then bouncing off of what they're saying is the best way to get into the conversation, the yes and improv method. If a player at your table is, for example, interrogating an NPC or trying to bargain, join in on that interrogation or that bargain. Don't just let one person just dominate the entire conversation. Try to join in. Now, of course, the domineering or more charismatic player, maybe domineering is a bit of an aggressive word, more charismatic player has to be accepting towards you joining into their little role play. However, if they are not selfish and they're allowing you to join, then that is the best way to jump into a roleplay conversation. It's really hard to just start. So, letting someone else start for you and then jumping in when the conversation is going is a good way to practice and to get into character. It honestly just takes one person to start an entire roleplay conversation. I have seen this firsthand. My players have recently started talking to each other in character and started roleplaying more, and I absolutely love it. And I've noticed that it just takes one person starting a conversation in character with an NPC or another player to spark an entire 5 to 10 minute discussion. It's awesome. If you want an example of this on YouTube, obviously Critical Role is a great example. I understand that they're all professional actors, but if you want to learn this skill, Critical Role models it really well. They all are great at the yes and improv method and are a good basis for learning. Just don't expect yourself to be as good as them immediately. They are professionals after all. Tip number 2, learn about your own character. This is really important. If you want to talk in character, you need to know about your character. Before I even did Dungeons & Dragons, I did a lot of impromptu acting, and figuring out the character I'm playing is the biggest part of doing that well. If I don't know who I'm supposed to be playing, the tone I'm trying to convey, I am not going to do a great job playing that character. Every time I've done a round badly, it's because I didn't know the tone or the character that I was going for. It's the same thing in Dungeons & Dragons. When you're playing D&D, you need to know what character you're supposed to be playing. When I'm DMing, I write down tone words for the NPCs that I play. Just 3 to 4 words is enough for me to bounce off and create an interesting conversation that feels dynamic and different from the other characters I'm playing. Now, of course, as a player, you're probably only going to be playing one character at a time. So, you can absolutely go beyond just 3 words. But my example before still applies. If you only want to start with 3 words, it can go a long way. Just a couple tone words to figure out what character you're playing. For example, strong Independent, sassy. That's an easy one. You automatically now have an idea of what that character is like. And from those 3 words, you can start building out a personality. Start practicing a couple lines. Obviously, D&D is not scripted, but just talking a little bit to yourself in character, coming up with catchphrases or things you think a character would say is a great way to figure out things you would say in the moment when you're role-playing. Same thing goes for taking examples. If you want a strong, independent, sassy character, look at characters like Yelena from the new Black Widow film or Arya Stark. Those are great examples of characters that are like that, and you can use their lines as examples on how you should play your character. As always, I recommend not ripping off another character, but there's nothing wrong with taking inspiration. It's the best way to roleplay, in my opinion. It's how I get a lot of my best NPCs. This is going to sound annoying and tacky and stupid, but practice. Practice, practice, practice always makes perfect, and that goes for Dungeons & Dragons roleplay as well. Now, how do you practice roleplaying? You can't have a D&D game whenever you want, and you're not always going to have people to roleplay with. Well, it's always helped me just to talk to myself in the mirror. When I'm doing impromptu acting, when I'm doing Dungeons & Dragons, talking to myself in the mirror has been really, really helpful for practicing my characters. Even when I'm just DMing and not having a specific character to play, when I do important NPCs, I will practice a couple lines in the mirror. Like I said before, D&D is not scripted, but having a couple lines memorized and ready to go can help you bounce off and have a cool character conversation and can establish the tone you want to go for. Practicing those lines in the mirror and getting the delivery right, it's always been very, very helpful for me. Aside from that, Jenny D's roleplay practice videos are also very, very good. I've done a couple of them for characters, and I did one for my new character for Dice Goblins, Crumble, and they were very, very helpful as well. Practicing roleplay can be nerve-wracking because, quite frankly, it's weird. It is weird, but it is fun when you get into it, and it is very rewarding. You'll be able to tell the difference if you just put a little bit of time into mastering your character. Taking all these steps into account can really go a long way into making you a great role player. Alright, if you enjoyed this episode of Tabletop Tavern Tips and you want to let me know, then please do hit that like button. If you want to see more content from Crispy's Tavern, then please do hit that subscribe button. And finally, if you want to leave your own tips or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.